one of my main goals with my reading was to read the world. I've been doing the Read the World Challenge, which is where you try and read a book from every country in the world, for a good few years now. I add a few new countries each year, but this year I want to knuckle down and get some of the more difficult countries that I've been having difficulty finding books for, and really basically just focus in on some of the countries that I'm missing. I thought I'd do a little introduction today of everything I've read so far. Where possible, I would like them to be translated if I can. And also I am trying to focus as much as possible on women in translation, just purely because that's my favourite thing to read. So I've read a translated book from 37 countries. That does include the UK and the USA because they don't have a translated book I can read because they are already in English. I haven't, however, included Canada and Australia because there are indigenous languages there that I could read from. And then for women in translation, I've read from 31 countries, so I'm not too far behind. So I'm going to talk through every country I've read from so far. I probably won't mention every book I've read, but I'll either say which book I have read for the ones that I've only read one, and for ones that I've read a few, I'll just give you my top reads or my best recommendations. And yeah, hopefully you can find out some ideas if you're doing the challenge yourself or get inspired to do the challenge yourself. Let's get started because this might take a while. Okay, so we'll start with Afghanistan. So I read My Pen is the Wing of a Bird, which is a collection of stories written by Afghan women. I really enjoyed this. I think it's really powerful and just really interesting to read from loads of different perspectives, which you don't always get with a translated work. You often just get one. So it was really good and I would recommend if you're interested. I've read quite a few from Argentina. I would say my favourite is probably Tender is the Flesh by Augusta Bazterrica. And I've also read 19 Claws and a Blackbird from the same author, which I read this year and really enjoyed. This one is about a world where humans are eaten similarly to how we eat animals today. They are farmed. It's quite gruesome but really interesting. I would definitely recommend. And then also from Argentina, just a shout out to Mariana Enriquez, who I have all her books. They're all short story horror collections. We have Things We Lost in the Fire, The Danger of Smoking in Bed, and A Sunny Place for Shady People. And she's just kind of an auto-buy author for me. I really enjoyed those short story collections. So I've read 2 books from Austria. I've read Last House Before the Mountain by Monica Helfer. I think this is I got it in a charity shop. I think it's like a arc of some kind. So I don't know if the real cover looks like this. But I loved this. But my favourite Austrian read has been The Wall by Marlon Haushofer. This was is still one of my favourite books of all time. It changed me as a person, this book did. It's about a woman who is spending a few days in the mountains on holiday and wakes up one day and there's a sort of dome been put over her that she can't get out of, some transparent wall, and behind it there's no life and she can't see any life, and it's how she sort of survives in this wild situation. It's really it just really changed me as a person. I can't recommend it enough. Then we have Belgium. We have I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman and Orlando by the same author. Again, not to harp on, but this is also one of my favourite books of all time. It's about a group of women who are kept underground in a cage in isolation. They've no recollection of how they got there or why they're there. They don't know how long they've been there. And then one day they escape, and it's how they sort of survive, I guess, in a world where they've never known men. Yeah, this is also really good, but definitely my favourite. For Bosnia, I've read Catch the Rabbit. I don't remember much about this, if I'm honest. It didn't maybe leave an impact, so, but I did read it quite a while ago. For Brazil, I've read The Alchemist. I didn't love this book. I know it's like a cult classic, but it just didn't hit me the way it seems to hit some other people. But I would really like to read a female author from Brazil. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. Then we have Burkina Faso. So I've read So Distant From My Life by Monique Ilbaldo. It's about a guy having to migrate. Well, he's going from West Africa and tries to get to Morocco, and his journey and people he meets along the way, and like how he's gonna do what is a very difficult thing to migrate across so many countries. Again, I read it quite a long time ago, but I remember it being like quite a powerful read when I read it. Then we have Chile, which I read a book this year called Clean by Alia Trabuco Zaran. This is following a housekeeper slash maid who works for a rich family, and the book opens with a young girl has died and they're interviewing the housekeeper to see what she knows. China, I read The Last Quarter of the Moon by Qi Zijian. This is the most beautiful cover ever. Like, I'm sorry, the Vintage Earth collection by Vintage is just so beautiful. I have quite a few of them up there. The wall is also from that collection, which is again very beautiful. This is more of like a big historical saga following a tribe in I think like northeastern China. They live in the forest, they're very like at one with nature, and it follows like multiple generations, including when I think the tribe gets invaded or they have to like move for some reason. But really like one of those, again, quite powerful books where you like really get sucked into the characters. So then we have Colombia, which I read Fish Soup by Margarita Garcia Rebello. Again, I read this a good maybe 4 years ago and I can't remember a single thing about it. So maybe I need to revisit Colombia soon. Czechia, I've read 2 Kafka books, The Metamorphosis and In the Penal Colony. I wouldn't say I'm a big Kafka fan. I did enjoy both of those, but I would again like to read something from a female author. If you have any recommendations. Then we have Denmark, which has become a new favourite recently. So I've read all 3 of the On the Calculation of Volume series by Solveig Ballet. Loved the first one, didn't love the second one. Loved the third one again. So I'm excited for the 4th one, which comes out next year. This follows a woman who has got stuck in time. So she wakes up on the same day every day, but she's the only one that seems to remember that she's already lived this day yesterday. And it's how she's dealing with that, with her husband, with her like friends' life, everything like that. And then I also this year read The Employees by Olga Raven, and I would like to read her other books because I really enjoyed this. This is following a bunch of humans slash humanoids that are working on a spaceship, and they are investigating a new planet, and they've brought on board these objects from this planet that are really weird, but it's told in like interviews, almost like interview transcripts. Some of them are really short and it's all different like perspectives of what's going on. Ecuador, I've read Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. So it's about 2 school friends. It's very weird. There's a lot of like, they're doing a lot of like the classic things that girls do in their girlhood, which is like creepy rituals and like telling scary stories and like just classic little like creepy girlhood activities. And there's a weird relationship with one of the teachers, I think I remember. But it was a really interesting look into like growing up, but a little bit of horror, a little bit of like a toxic female friendships. Then for Egypt, I've read Memoirs of a Woman Doctor by Nawal El-Sadawi. It's following a young Egyptian woman who decides to study to be a doctor, being the only woman in a class full of men. And then we have Equatorial Guinea, where I read La Bastida by Trifonia Melabi Abano. It's the story of a young girl who lives with her grandmother, but she's obsessed with finding her dad, her like biological father, and she comes across a lot of different like people, and it's very interesting, and I really enjoyed that one too. Okay, the lighting might have gone a bit strange, but I took my dog for a walk. So we are back. It's a bit darker. We got to France. I've read a few books from French authors. I really enjoyed My Husband by Maud Ventura, which is sort of a bit of like a thriller, following a wife who is obsessed with her husband, but again to the point of maybe a toxic I mean, obsession never sounds non-toxic. But I also read this year The Moustache, and this was so weird. This is about a man who shaves off his moustache one day, expecting a reaction from the people around him who know him, and he has always had a moustache. And then no one has a reaction, and everyone's like, "You've never had a moustache," and he's like, "I have had a moustache." It gets quite scary because he's like, he thinks everyone's playing a trick on him, and it's got a real creepy ending. But yes, really good. Then for Germany, we have A Simple Intervention. This follows a nurse working in a sort of hospital / institution where they've got this groundbreaking intervention that they can free people, mainly women, from psychological disorders. Then for Greece, we have the Iliad by Homer. I haven't read the Odyssey, but I have read this one. I did enjoy it. I would like to read something maybe slightly more modern from Greece. But I mean, it's got to be done. And although it was a long time of my life, I did enjoy it. I do like Greek mythology, so it was just on my bucket list of things to read. Then we have Hungary, which I also ticked off this year. I guess I'm filming this in 2026, so last year, which I read The Door by Magda Sabo. This is a very interesting little book. It follows a young writer who hires a housekeeper, a woman called Emerence, who's quite an elderly Hungarian woman, and it's how their relationship develops. She's a very complex woman, Emerence is, and she's kind of unforgettable. I know that sounds a bit cringy, but like, it's crazy how I read this and I don't think I'll ever forget that character in particular. Like, bits of the story I'll probably forget, but that character really will stick with you. Then we have Iceland. My favourite would probably be Swanfolk or Magma, both really good. Swanfolk follows a woman who is a young spy, and she comes across these creatures that are half women, half swan, and they're really weird and creepy, and it's how they interact with her and like what happens. It's very interesting. A bit weird, but I like weird. So then we have Italy. So for Italy, my recommendation is Anything by Elena Ferrante. One of my favorite authors ever. I have all her books, I think, but if you have to start, pick My Brilliant Friend and read the Neapolitan Quartet, because I love these books. They follow a friendship between two girls, Elena and Lila. They're born in Naples, and it's just, you just have to read it. I don't even need to tell you any more than that. You just need to read it. It's beautiful and one of just the greatest series I've ever read. Then we move on to Japan, which was quite hard because I've read probably the most Japanese of any like translated literature. One of my favourites, so I do like Haruki Murakami. My favourite is The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. I read this quite a long time ago now, but this was like a really impactful book to me at the time. Like, I just really enjoyed the magical realism. It's about a man whose cat has disappeared, his wife's acting weird, and he goes down a well. And then there's just like, get some weird telephone calls and just weird stuff happens, which is classic Murakami. And then we have Sayaka Murata. So there's Convenience Store Woman, Earthlings, and Life Ceremony, all very weird, which I love. And then I also thought I'd shout out Things Remembered and Things Forgotten by Kota Nakajima, because I think those few are really obvious, whereas this is maybe less well-known Japanese short story collection, but I really enjoyed this one. And I mean, beautiful cover as well. Then we have Lithuania. So I read Shadows on the Tundra. So this follows a girl who, well, the author, when she was 14, her and her family were deported from Lithuania and taken to a labor camp in Siberia. And she then escapes, and it's how it's basically her life story, and it's just so powerful, like scary, horrible to read in places, but so powerful. Like how someone endures such terrible things and carries on and survives through it. It's just very inspiring. Then we have Mexico, where I've read Stillborn. It follows two women, one who's decided she never wants to be a mother and has been sterilized, and another who decides she does want to be a mother quite late in life, and sort of the different choices they make, how those different choices affect them. For Morocco, I've read both Blood Feast and The Country of Others. I'd say The Country of Others is probably my favourite of those two. Leila Slimani is actually a French-Moroccan author, but this is like sort of a historical family saga following a Moroccan man and a French woman, but I might be wrong. But they meet and fall in love during a war. He's a soldier and she's a civilian, and they get married, and it's their life after the war. Then we have the Netherlands. I think my book for this country is We Had to Remove This Post by Hannah Bevowetz. This is really like so up my street. It's following a woman who's a content moderator for social media, so she has to review horrible videos and hate that people post and decide whether it gets to stay up or needs to be removed, which is just an interesting topic in itself. But it also follows how this affects her life, because obviously viewing horrible, like violent or offensive content every day is going to have an effect on you and your life. So really interesting. Then we have Norway. So the book I've read for Norway is Paradise Rot by Jenny Haval, and I also have another book that I want to read by Jenny Haval called Girls Against God. Paradise Rot is again toxic girlhood, toxic female friendship. So it follows a girl who's moved somewhere new for university, and she's sharing a house with a woman who's quite strange and sort of has no boundaries, and the house starts sort of reflecting their relationship, I guess. So I'm excited to read the second book I have from her. Then we have Palestine. So I've read Minor Detail by Adanias Shibli, which I would recommend to anyone. Very obviously powerful. And then I've also read Light in Gaza by Jihad Abu Salim. Again, really impactful, and if you haven't read anything from a Palestine author, you definitely should put that to the top of your list. Then we have Poland. So you have Drive Your Plows Over the Bones of the Dead. This is about a sort of eccentric old woman who sort of becomes a bit of like a armchair investigator, or armchair detective, I should say, with some things that happen in her local village. Then we have Russia. I've read Anna Karenina, which I did love, but I would like to read one, something more modern, and two, something from a female author. So again, if you have any recommendations, let me know. Then we have South Korea. I've read quite a few from South Korea. I would like to shout out, I mean, maybe these are just for the covers. They are the most beautiful covers. Eliza Shua Duspin. So there's the Pachinko Parlor, Winter in Sokcho, and Vladivostok Circus. I just am obsessed with those covers. I do like the books too. I won't tell you what they're all about, but they are very beautiful, sort of atmospheric writing. I remember this one in particular being super atmospheric. It's about like a winter in a tourist town, but they were all very atmospheric. I think my favourite author from South Korea is Bora Chung. So I read Your Utopia last year. Really enjoyed it. It's like short stories that sort of focus on futuristic technological advancements. Like there's rich people who want to be immortal. There's there's an AI lift that falls in love with one of the people living in the apartment complex, which I think was my favourite story. But yeah, this was really good, and I also I've read Cursed Bunny, which is another book by this author, which I also really loved, and she has a new book out called The Midnight Timetable, I think, something like that. But anyway, that is on very soon on my radar. Then we have Sweden. So Fredrik Backman was my main Sweden author for a long time. I really love the Beartown trilogy. I really love A Man Called Ove. That made me sob. But this year I also read a female author called Hannah Lutz with Wild Boar. I loved this. This was about a group of people living in a forest that has a growing population of wild boar, and it's how boar are like affecting their lives in different ways, their different relationships with the different people. I'm a conservationist, so books about like how nature and humans interact always sort of speak to me quite strongly, so I really enjoyed this. Only a few left. So then we have Taiwan, so I read The Man with Compound Eyes. Again, beautiful cover. I love the covers of these series. This follows a island where every second son must leave on the day he turns 15 as like a sacrifice to their gods. And the main character is one of these boys, and he's determined to survive, and he ends up being washed ashore on the shore of Taiwan during like some sort of storm. And he meets a woman who lives in Taiwan, and they like form this like unlikely friendship. And then finally we have Uruguay. So I read, again last year, Pink Slime. I thought I would really love this, but in the end I don't think I did as much as I thought I would. I didn't hate it, but it was more like a 3-star for me. It follows a young woman living in a post-virus pandemic world. It's like an ecological pandemic has caused this like dystopian world, and she's looking after a young disabled boy, and it's how she's like dealing with caring for this boy during what is quite a difficult time, as well as her relationships with her mother and her ex-husband. Oh, and I forgot because it's not in my spreadsheet, but I also read from Montenegro last year. This is Anomaly by Andrei Nikolaidis, and it follows a bunch of different characters on the last day of human civilization. The next day, human existence is going to end, and it's all these different like slightly morally corrupt / twisted people and what they were doing on their last day, how that like catastrophic event at the end of human existence is going to affect them. Very weird little book, but quite interesting. And that is everything. I feel like I've been talking for so long. That is every country I've read from so far. I will leave this video there, and hopefully this gives you a bit of inspiration for books you could pick up for some different countries. And yeah, I've got some plans for 2026 on some new countries to read from, but I will always take suggestions and recommendations in the comments. So if you do have any for any countries I've not read, or any countries I have read from, because I'm not averse to going back to different countries, do let me know. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.